Natalie, thank you for coming on and being a part of this podcast. And I know you're really into personal growth and development and therapies and whatnot. So a lot of people, it's very in line with their interests that listen to this podcast. So just to kick things off, would you mind introducing yourself and what it is you're involved with?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for having me. First of all, it's really an exciting opportunity to be able to talk to you guys about what I do. So I'm a therapist, traditionally trained psychotherapist. I'm also a board certified registered art therapist. So I kind of always had like an alternative side to things. I've always been really interested in art. And when I found out about what art therapy was through a family experience, it was kind of like a click moment where I just knew that I would pursue that as a passion. So I went and got my master's in marital and family counseling as well as art therapy, and have been practicing in that field since 2011. And as my journey unfolded through school, because we did a kind of a practicum where we'd work with clients in school, I had a life fallout, as my husband calls it, Chernobyl, kind of like the meltdown. Halfway through 2012, basically experienced a really heavy spiritual emergency when I went to Mexico and got bit by a tick and got Lyme disease, and it was during a breakup, and just a lot of things kind of happening, including all at once, to create sort of a dark night of the soul. And that was where, you know, I really kind of had the sense of losing myself and everything sort of falling out from under me, including my physical body. Actually had a psychotic episode when the Lyme first started hitting my system, and had to drop out of grad school and everything. So when I came through that, it was because of the result of a spiritual healing. And it healed me mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, and was pretty profound. A very wild kind of experience that happened overnight. So I went back to school to finish up my master's, and I knew I just wouldn't be a normal therapist, that I wanted to do what that person had done for me through the power of prayer, working with spiritual guides, higher guidance, and just using grounding and alignment tools to work to heal people from the inside out. And ever since I've been committed to that, I would say I've always had like kind of interesting and kind of unbelievable experiences throughout my whole life. But since I've really taken it to the next level, consciously connecting and wanting to work in that way energetically, it's been just a miraculous ride. There's things that happen sometimes every day, definitely every week, where I'm just like reminded of the amazing world we live in and how much help is available to us if we only ask and believe, you know. So it's been interesting. But so what I've done lately is I've opened up what I call True Self Institute, and it was kind of a name that was given to me. So it's all sort of making sense now as I put the pieces together, meaning given to me intuitively. And so I'm starting it as, it's been a private practice where I see people for art therapy and standard therapy, but with a spiritual take. And so I work with people's energy and alignment. I work with Reiki healing, and I also provide hypnosis and different alternative services to really just help people get into alignment with their, I don't know if you call it high self, or, you know, that spiritual source that personally works for them. And yeah, so that's kind of where I've been. I've been hosting a networking group for more alternative practitioners throughout Phoenix here, whether they be in the naturopathic field or acupuncture, or if they're a life coach or whatever it is that they do, if they have that interest in, you know, kind of like the invisible influences that are impacting us day to day and how we can manifest our reality, and really, you know, knowing that that reality is projected from the inside out. So coming together to dialogue about inspired healing tools and just all the things that we've been experiencing in our personal and professional lives with clients, to just nerd out. And yeah, that's called Soul Solutions. So I've been doing that for about a year, and I'm expanding into a larger office just in the next month. Going to be getting a classroom style office that has a suite attached to it. So offering workshops, and from there, I don't know where it's going to go. I'm just sort of taking directions, boots on the ground through my intuitive process, connecting to source, and receiving inspiration, and kind of not knowing what's coming, but trusting that. And it's been phenomenal so far. So there's a lot of really exciting projects and things in the works.
Mm-hmm. That sounds pretty exciting. And just to mention this, so you were in Mexico 2012.
Yes.
And this is when you had the tick bite, basically, which would have led into the Lyme disease. it's interesting that you were in Mexico in 2012. This is like a Mayan calendar transformational shift process for you, where you get this Lyme tick bite. You know, I always think that these things happen to us, where it's like it's part of your process, and this needs to happen. And just before we started this episode, I was talking about Ram Dass, and he had a stroke, and it's like he considers his stroke that he was stroked. You know, and it's almost like you're being graced or blessed with this thing that at the time you're thinking, wow, this is like horrendous. Why did this happen to me? You have this victimized mentality, but then as time goes on, everything starts to reveal itself and be part of your whole transformative process and your evolution as a conscious human being having this like human experience. So you were blessed with the opportunity to have that particular experience, which has led you down this path. It sounds very exciting to me. I haven't had like illnesses in that sense myself, but I've spoken with a lot of people that have, and it's really great to hear when people come out of these things like a butterfly. You know, they go into it and they come out and they're stronger and they're spreading a message and they have a vision, and you know they're on their path. So it's great that you're doing that. Now with your therapy, you mentioned you're moving into a larger office. Do you offer online therapy, coaching, training, or anything like that as well?
Yes, so because hypnosis, Reiki, and art therapy are not state licensed, so I can offer all those services via teleconference online. And that is something that I'm hoping to, I'm kind of joining forces with a team of people from all over the country, and we're creating a media platform and event, basically. So we're starting off with a cruise on a cruise ship in 2020. That's going to be one of our first of many annual events. And we're creating a multimedia platform too. So I think I'm going to work on honing my skills as far as like getting a team and putting something together that's going to be more widespread and create available content and services for people, wherever they are in the United States at the very least. And so, yeah, that's something that I'm trusting will eventually happen. I can see people for teleconference services already, and I have done that. It's not something, it's still kind of interesting because I've been living in the world of, you know, really intense mental health, and, you know, it's a state by state thing, and there's, you know, boards governing and all sorts of things that you have to be aware of ethically and legally. So it's been an interesting line to walk, but I really do see the face of therapy changing as we progress. More and more practitioners are seeing the benefit of some of the alternative methods, like the life coaching industry, right? It's exploded. It's not so much about, you know, diagnosing a disorder and talking about a problem. Really, we're working toward, you know, deconstructing the whole societal condition and cultural conditioning of thinking of ourselves in that way, and really stepping into our power and our true identity, which is why, you know, True Self Institute just makes so much sense to me now. But yeah, it's kind of a part of my greater mission to provide education around this stuff, because, you know, when I went through what I did in 2012, there was a definite part of that experience. And I've experienced many things ever since I was, you know, a kid, really. I've believed in spirits and ghosts because I've had experiences that just weren't, you know, explainable, and things that were witnessed by, you know, my entire family at points in time and other people. So, you know, it made it kind of obvious to me, but my experience in 2012, it was definitely an experience where I felt spiritually compromised. I'd actually gone to Peru shortly after I sat on the tick in Mexico, because I sat down on it. It was on a bed in a hostel. Sorry if there's background noise, the trash is coming. But, you know, so I essentially went to Peru and tried an ayahuasca ceremony with my mom. I was not in a good place in my relationship with my now husband. We'd been dating for 6 years at the time. And I was really seeking for answers outside of myself. And I'd already been kind of the spiritual explorer, you could say, like grew up playing with the Ouija board and getting out of my body during lunch, during nap time, or, you know, just trying all these really kind of intense spiritual things, because I wanted to find out if it was real or not. And time again, you know, I've had these experiences that have just proven to me that there's more to this life than we see. And when I went through that experience, you know, ayahuasca is really, I don't know if you've heard of it, but dimethyltryptamine, it's a molecule that our bodies naturally secrete when we're being born and when we're dying. And, you know, how people kind of see things in the hospital when they're on the edge of transitioning over. So it really, in my opinion, it peels back the layer and assists us with being out of our body and being able to perceive the multidimensional reality that always exists all around us all the time, but that we most of the time aren't aware of. So yeah, I had an experience where I believe I was compromised by something. You know, we had definite experiences happening in tandem with, you know, not only coming down with the Lyme disease and all of the mental and emotional stuff, but, you know, doors opening and closing in front of us and things that just couldn't have been explained away. And so I believe I was compromised by, you know, something darker in nature. And it's not something to really freak out about or worry yourself about, because when we stand in our power, no matter how you're treating something, you're going to want to help that person step into their true life force, their true source energy, which is grounded and comes from sourced in love. And that understanding of our identity, that we're always truly connected to that, even if we don't perceive it, we can assist with the sort of chiropractic adjustment in the energy field, the shift that's needed to separate from anything that we're you know, mistaken identity associating with, or whether it's our wounds or, you know, some other type of energy out there that is attracted to those wounds. So that makes sense. I know it's kind of out there. I'm really putting it out there today. But
No, it does. It's funny you mentioned that. So during your spiritual, I guess, inquisition of some sort, you were wondering if, like, what was real, and you're kind of questioning what's real. And I always, this quote always comes to mind, that all in which we see or seen is but a dream within a dream. This waking state is, then it's to shift the perception to, is this waking state real? You know, and to try and wrap your head around that, because it seems like a lot of your focus now is really bringing people back into their own inner knowing, their true nature. And I thought your branding is actually nice in that sense as well, because I suppose that's really what the focus is on. It's just to bring people back into their own power, you know, and their own, because everyone does have that own transformative healing power within them. It's just they become so accustomed to this being brought up and learning what this society is teaching them, that it's like they're unlearning that power at the same time. So it's like they're learning these third dimensional things, in large part these stupid little devices now. But you know, they're forgetting the fact that these things hold nothing compared to our own inner nature. So I guess returning people back to that strength is something that's really powerful that you're a part of. And actually, I wanted to ask you if you do retreats as well. Like, I know you'd mentioned you're doing the cruise, but you actually like hold retreats where people can come and gather and do like ayahuasca ceremonies. I am familiar with DMT. I haven't had ayahuasca, but I've had a synthesized form of 4-ACO DMT, which is basically like a powder form. And in this way, you actually can ingest it. And because of how it's been processed, you don't necessarily need that ayahuasca combination or whatever that makes you receptive to it. So I had just the powder on its own, and it was like a 10-hour high where I would literally be walking around and like just fractals everywhere. Like the peak of it was probably about 3 to 4 hours of just like the clouds became this scenic battle. Like I'm looking at a wood grain on my outside back deck, and it's sliding back and forth. My carpet in my basement turned into quicksand and started spiraling beneath me. I looked at my wife. Actually, when it first kicked in, I was eating breakfast on my deck, and I was looking over at my wife. I had this like an egg up to my mouth, and I looked over to her, and behind her, the trees started spiraling into a vortex. And I was like, oh, I think it's kicking in. So it was a really interesting experience with that. I've even done the psilocybin mushrooms as well and had these really great experiences. So when I come out of these things, I always think that we have this like filter that we all wear, like sunglasses, that prevents us from, because these, you know, I couldn't walk around all day and see spirals and fractals. It would drive me nuts. So, you know, it's like we just see what we need to see. And that's really what that learned, you know, societal thing is. You know, you wake, you come out, you are birthed, and then you kind of just are taught what to see. And you kind of have to reconnect with all that other stuff, that multidimensional aspect of yourself. So getting back to the question, do you hold any retreats where people can come and have those type of experiences, ayahuasca or anything like that?
No. So for me, because I'm walking that line, and personally, actually, you know, ayahuasca was a part of what kind of broke me down during that time. You know, I think that it's something that can help a lot of people, and I've met many people, and that's kind of why I considered it. You know, I was on a debate team during my grad program to advocate for the use of it therapeutically. But I definitely don't think it's for everyone at every point, right? So it can be really profoundly opening, and there are dangers inherently associated with it. People have actually died taking it, and there's a dark side, just like anything else. So, I encourage people to be really careful with how and who they do it with, and what kind of state of mind they're already in, and all of these things that can impact it, whether they're going through major life transitions, because it can create, Kundalini awakening. It can create energetic, like holes in our aura that can assist anything that is outside of ourselves with, attaching easier. Not to say that it wasn't all for a reason. I don't regret anything, and I've told people before on other podcasts that, like, I shudder to think of who I would be without going through this experience. So I know it's all part of my divine plan, and I've accepted that. But I'm fairly more careful when it comes to using substances and just letting people kind of make that decision on their own, because again, I'm walking that line between mental health, and that's certainly, deemed illegal here still, whether we like that or not. The other thing that's, coming to mind is that we have this capacity to see these things within our own inner vision, and that already happens for me on the daily basis. When I work with clients in the Reiki, I'm seeing those kinds of things like vortexes and energy holes and symbols and animals and all sorts of things coming up. So for me, it's been more about, getting more into my body instead of forcing myself through and this is just my personal experience. It could be totally different for someone else, but taking substances felt like a forced, shoving me off the edge of the cliff without much preparation. And I had to go through some really intense recovery period because of that. And so yeah, as far as your question goes, no retreats at this point. I do want to offer retreats, but more focused on grounded meditation, on, truly finding natural ways to connect, because we have those capacities already within us, and it's fun to experience. And some people are really drawn to that world. And, I'm not saying that there's no chance I ever would again, but I know for sure, like, until I'm very grounded in my intuition and I get a strong yes, it won't be happening again for me. Because I kind of went into it without thinking. It was before, I really knew how to connect to myself, and I really didn't understand myself or a lot of the laws of the universe back then when I did give that a whirl. So it's a weird thing, because it's always like that concept where life is sort of unfolding like a movie, and we only do the best we can with what we know how in every given moment. But yeah, so I'm in acceptance of what my path has brought me, but I do definitely encourage people to be careful with things like ayahuasca and mushrooms, and, especially if there's other biochemical features. A lot of the people I work with are struggling with depressive disorders or bipolar or, whatever sort of neurochemical issues they've already got going on. And I've seen people get completely ruined, put on their butt for like a year from trying something like poison dart frog or psilocybin, or, there's all sorts of things out there right now. And do you want to go into an expansion where you're looking at your power and you're connecting to a loving source, or do you want to go to a mental institution and question everything for a year? And those are very real things that I've seen. So not to be the squeaky wheel on the cart, but just to really cause people to consider it, because it's such a powerful medicine. It's an extremely opening thing. The forces that it impact in our body and brain and our spirit are very real. And I think it's getting very trendy, so more and more now I'm hearing like, oh, ayahuasca, I wanted to try that. And so just taking the other, approach, because people have died, it's not like it's just like smoking weed or something, So yeah, that.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said it's become a little bit trendy, and that's kind of the way things go with that. It's like the woke generation. I have a few friends that are like that as well. I actually have one friend who's done the frog poisoning, the ayahuasca, all that. I think he's done something like, I asked him recently, 26 sessions in like a year and a half.
Yeah.
Like it's extremely high. And I find that when people are doing that, they're not dealing with, and I'll quote this to the real world. When they come back to the real world, they're not really utilizing anything they would have had in that transformative process experience, taking it back with them and improving their day-to-day life and improving those lives, the lives of those around them. I feel like they're just constantly doing it as an escape. It's become the new Tylenol, you know, if you want to put it that way. A lot of people will just go and do this every other weekend because it gets them that escape. And I think, it's kind of a big issue, but I feel like it's being talked about a lot. I actually had Kyle Buller on from Psychedelics Today podcast not too long ago, and we were talking about how just simple breath work therapies can start to slowly introduce someone to then potentially having some sort of psychedelic substance. But through just breath work therapy, you know, holotropic breathing, and apparently he was saying some sessions go like 2-3 hours of breath work therapy, that you can start to open people up that way using their own natural mechanisms.
Powerful.
Then later on, maybe introduce something that's going to be a little bit more of that, like what you said, kind of shoving you over the edge.
Yes.
You're kind of like, whoa, what is all this? You know, like I didn't do too, you know what, I grew up doing martial arts and all different stuff. So I guess I had some background in breath work. But when I first did the psychedelics, it was kind of that feeling like you get pushed over the edge. To me, when I did it, it's almost like I had this feeling of familiarity. I was like, oh, I've been here before. You know, I've been in this space, and it's not too foreign to me, this realm. And then when I come back, I do feel like you know, it's like brain training in a way for me, and I don't do it too often. Actually, the last time I did it, it was another friend of mine was watching Mike Tyson on Joe Rogan's podcast, and Mike Tyson was describing smoking the frog DMT or something, and how he was so hesitant to it, so resistant to it, that feeling of death and, you know, having to really surrender, and then he surrendered and felt pure love and pure compassion, this altruistic, you know, eternal feeling of just this. When I was on shrooms once, I felt like I was under a waterfall, and this love was pouring onto me, and it was endless. There was no end to it, and I could surrender anything to it, and it's almost like this thing would just laugh at all this foolish stuff, all these like petty little human things I'm surrendering. It's like, oh, that thing, whatever, man, nothing. You know, whatever you're feeling upset about, it just like dissolved immediately. Love. So my friend, he messaged my other buddy who's done this stuff like 26 times or whatever. He said, hey man, I watched this Mike Tyson on Joe Rogan. I want to try this smokable DMT. He's never done it before. He was supposed to come over to my house to do it. Actually, he ended up flopping, never ended up coming. But my other buddy, of course, the one that does it all the time, he showed up and held a big ceremony. That was my first time trying this smokable DMT where you blast off for like 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
That was probably the best experience I've ever had, like surpassing all the mushroom ones, surpassing all the 4-ACO DMT stuff. Like this was a 10 to 15 minute blast off session. And the experience I had was just like remarkable. It was amazing. Actually, when he did it out of like a vape pen, and I took a couple hits on this vape pen, and I knew it was kicking in because this vape pen turned into a magic flute in my hand as I was, and all of a sudden the smoke from the flute turned into music notes. And then my buddy and these other people in the room started getting this aura glowing around them. And I was just like, oh, you can have your flute back now. It's like, I think this is working. And then I just laid back. And usually when I get into that state, because I do meditative like practice on a daily basis. So usually I'm just going deep into mantra, and I find that it's really, I don't know, it helps really guide those type of journeys for me when I get into a mantra. So yeah, anyways, but I do think these things have this tremendous power. So getting back to my point, it was actually more relating to the breathwork therapies.
Yeah.
Do you see there being potential in breathwork and trauma therapy in that way leading into the use of psychedelics? And I know psychedelics has actually just been decriminalized as of like 2 days ago in Denver. So I see it being like a domino effect soon where all these different places are going to start decriminalizing. But I think a good entryway into it is breathwork therapy. I just want to get your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert on psychedelics or anything, just with my limited experiences. But I do see it trending that way because I think everything's going to kind of dissolve as time goes on in terms of, titles and the way that we're kind of practicing we do and the way that culture will shift into a more flexible space. And I think that absolutely could be a huge blessing and will happen. I mean, I always tend to think of things in like terms of 50 to 100 years, so bigger picture, yes, of course, that will eventually be the case. And because it's like ignorance beginning to unravel, right? But it's just the awareness that it would completely fuck up many, many people, it would completely fuck them up. And so understanding that like not everybody is right for it, just like anything else. It's like we all have to kind of find our own unique journey, and understanding that there are drawbacks or downsides as well as like these amazing and wonderful opportunities. So that is something, and I've had extremely powerful experiences with breathwork in terms of the experiences that I've had. I'm actually getting trained in something called gateway healing in a couple of weeks, where it has to do with hyperventilation and combined with like really powerful intentional prayer and use of ascended master energy to help someone ascend. So yeah, there's different ways you can go about that, but even that might not be the right thing for somebody, so it's
right. Yeah, I was hearing that from Kyle, that sometimes people, even the breathwork stuff, depending on the degree of trauma and everything, like that can even become difficult for someone.
Oh God, some people can't meditate.
Yeah.
People can't draw a circle on a piece of paper. I'm not kidding.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen someone decompensate because they couldn't draw the circle because the circle is not there, because the safety, it wasn't there. It's all the collective unconscious and the way we store everything in our mind, body, and imagery. And there's just so much power behind things. Like art therapy is a great example, because imagery evokes so much within us that I've seen, there's a lot of ways you need to be really careful with even just giving someone a particular art media to work with when they're working through something. It's a real sacred process, and everybody's in their own unique space. And so meeting that person where they're at, it never looks the same. It's always a tailored process, really tuning in intuitively in the highest and unconditional love that I can put us in terms of like protecting the space energetically and setting sacred space, really making sure that I'm connecting to my fifth dimensional self, which is, my sourced self, essentially, while we're doing the work. It kind of guides me through the process of knowing and understanding what people need. I don't know how that expands into things like retreats, because most of my work has been, I've worked with many groups, but most of it's been one-on-one. So it's like much easier to be attuned to needs. So I think I would personally, just because I hold a high level of ethical and legal responsibility under the domain of what I do, I would be really careful with what I offer as a retreat, just to make sure that I'm causing good things to happen instead of creating any harm in the world. So
sure, yeah, I'm sure it would have to be a very selective group of people that would be part of some retreat. You wouldn't want to have people that are right on the edge or borderline schizophrenic or anything.
Yeah.
That might be a little bit tricky.
It switches up the nature of things, definitely. So, but when we're talking about this, I'm feeling really called to just like mention, that the piece where people can be escaping, and really getting out of their lives and out of their bodies. And that was what I was totally drawn to before my experience, and I think that was the biggest blessing, was like it put me back into my life and able to see things that I hadn't seen, like relationships that I hadn't been appreciating, all the blessings, all the gifts that are constantly surrounding us. And I've been more and more in tune with it over the 7 years now since I had that happen. It's been just like this journey of getting more and more present in my own life and everything around me. And that, it's a daily unfolding where I'm just realizing more and more that everything is as it should be. And I don't need to push or strive or prove to anybody or, make anything happen on the grounds of my worth. My self-worth is already inherent, and that is something that I think people are missing a lot of the times. They try to seek it outside of themselves, and it's in everything. It's not just psychedelics. It's not just spirituality. It's also, so present in our food industry. My husband and I were just joking around because we heard this Starbucks triple shot espresso can commercial this morning. And it's like, if you have so much to do so much that you want to accomplish, but you're completely run ragged and like completely out of energy. Drink one of these. And we're like, oh my God, tax out your adrenal system and completely shit on yourself for the future. You know, just the way that our society is so, you know, it's all about more, do. And it's wonderful too at the same time. Like I feel like we're in this time of empowerment where people are expanding into their own selves. We're relying less on, you know, the system to support us in creating our own businesses and creating our own abundance and really breaking free. And that's the amazing thing, is we're taking back the power from cultural conditioning or societal structure and putting it back in our own self and capitalizing on our unique nature and letting ourselves be ourselves. That becomes the gateway for our own abundance and manifesting and creating the reality and the life that we really want, which is so amazing and very invigorating, because it's just like, you think about the thousands of years it took to get to this point. It's a very exciting time we're living in. But yeah, I think that the escapism thing, the real point of life is that this is the only moment right now. And, you know, if we can't be present with right now and start to tune into the reality of our nature, which is the love. So if it's something that's not like love or, you know, under that umbrella, then you're looking at fear. And I guess my biggest passion is helping people to recognize that there's another reality underlying that fear. If they can recognize that the fear comes from, you know, the origins of our fear of separation from ourselves, from each other, from God, from our source, right? And separation and rejection. You know, there's so much that's ground into us biologically. We fear rejection to the nines because, you know, 500 years ago, if you were rejected, you could be beheaded, you could be left on an island, you could, you know, be completely outcast or starved to death. All these very like real survival patterns that have carried forward, and we're learning to undo them now and really own our unique true self, really being who we are. And that is flooding life force and forgiveness and healing and abundance. And I've seen it impact, you know, in my life personally and the lives of clients, just miracles, like long-standing patterns that have been existing for a long time, just dissolving overnight, you know, and healings, like healings in the body, healings in the mind and the emotions, and a connection to our true purpose, which is, you know, it's not like it's effortless, but there's a flow that supports you with stepping into that, and miracles come together. Like, you know, I've just seen so many examples in my own life where I'm like, I couldn't have planned this. Like, there's no way in hell I could have orchestrated this myself, but here I am, you know, putting together an event for 300 people on a cruise ship, you know, with unlimited resources. And, you know, who do you want? Like, what do you want to do? And it's like, how did I get here? Like, I know I was directed. Every moment was orchestrated by something greater than myself. And I continually practice surrender and leaning into that trust and knowing that the more I got in that alignment of loving who I truly am and believing in myself and surrendering all the rest, that something amazing would unfold. And it's really happening right now. So I think that's the message I really like most want to support when it comes to True Self Institute, is like, we don't have to run from ourselves. Yes, we're multidimensional, but we can have those kind of experiences when we close our eyes. You know, we can see like multidimensionally. We just need to shut up and tune in and like recognize that, you know. So,
and not have the 3-shot Starbucks coffee in the morning. that will help.
I will totally put a pitch out for Runa though. These are clean energy one.
I am drinking coffee right now, and I do have, but definitely not like a 3-shot Starbucks one.
No, but yeah.
You do the art therapy, and I'm a big proponent of that as well. Personally, I'm actually trying to get more into doing actual artistic drawings. I'm going to be posting them up on my podcast Instagram, just because I think it's a good way to create just a creative outlet, expression, that type of stuff. The art of calligraphy in itself is amazing. So the whole act of doing calligraphy is a meditative process. So it's funny when you mentioned someone who couldn't do a circle. Maybe they did have that Starbucks shot to make it a little bit difficult for them. But what is the biggest challenge you find that people have when they come to see you or speak with you in a one-on-one sort of setting? What is the main obstacle you find that is it trust, establishing trust with you, or establishing trust in their own abilities, trusting themselves? What do you find is a big hurdle for people?
Yeah. Well, first of all, that person that couldn't draw a circle, like they literally decompensated into a psychotic episode because of that. And so, it's like, depending on the trauma, because the collective unconscious holds so much information, like people associate the same things, like, the easy ones are rain is kind of like sadness or depression, right? Sunshine is happiness. The circle actually, like in our collective unconscious, represents wholeness, safety, and containment, like being contained in oneself. This person was like, she would go out of herself completely. And so when I just started with draw a circle, she couldn't do it because the safety of being herself wasn't there, and it triggered her right into psychosis. So she hadn't been in psychosis. So it's like that kind of like unexpected, how to create the safety for the person while they're holding the space, while we're holding space together. But what you're asking is, what do people struggle with the most? I really think that behind every fear is the fear of separation and rejection. I think that we all want love and belonging, and we all want to be recognized, seen, heard, understood. There's a lot of different capacities I work with people. So sometimes it's like families where they just don't feel seen, heard, and understood. And that is an extremely painful thing for people. That's why coming into someone who's going to not judge you and who's going to really be there for you to hold space for whatever it is that's showing up and help you to, make new meaning out of that can be extremely healing, because finally I'm feeling seen, heard, and understood, right? Usually that's all someone really needed. And this is neurochemical as well, or neurobiological, that once we feel seen, heard, and understood, we actually connect to the parts of our brain that can help us to move forward, to let go. So that's the main thing I think that I'm always working to facilitate, is helping people digest their emotions. Like they can be with them. They can truly feel them to the max capacity that they're able to feel. And therefore, in that acceptance, in that space of I can be with this, there is a release. There's a letting go mechanism, which I'm feeling energetically while the person's with me in many different ways. But I think that we're stuck because we experience that energy or that pattern or that programming so many times. So we believe it's us. We don't really know ourselves. And all of us are insane to some degree, or else we wouldn't be here right now. So it's like that whole idea that, we're all in this process of waking up. We're somewhere on the spectrum of insanity. And if we really knew, just like you're saying with that experience you had where, the waterfall of love, and it would just like laugh at whatever, that was a very similar experience as I had to ayahuasca. I didn't have a psychedelic experience. The first night was like totally dead sober, just sitting there. They gave me double the dose, and I was sitting there like scratching my head while people are speaking in tongues and like screaming and, all sorts of crazy shit's happening around me. And then the second night, same thing happened, and they were going to give me another dose. They're like, we're sorry, we don't know why you're not having a reaction, And I let go in that moment. I said, no, it's okay. I'm here for her, my mom, because she was having a really intense experience, and she got a lot of benefit out of it, actually. And as soon as I said it's okay, I immediately, I let go. I surrendered, right? And immediately got access to this greater emotional understanding where I fell into grief over, deaths that I'd experienced, where I felt like responsible, because my best friend passed away with me, and I've always felt responsible, like I caused her death, because whole long story, but I'd never been able to like access like the pure, true, raw grief underneath. And so in that moment, I was plunged into it. Like I could suddenly feel those places within me that were like at the lowest lows, and just like pure, utter grief and sorrow. And then I catapulted up to the highest highs, where I was just giggling like a madman, like the hardest laughter I've ever experienced, because I could see the reality. It's like a big joke. Like none of this matters. Nothing whatsoever. And so we're all trying to kind of reclaim that spectrum of awareness and understanding, but it's a two-sided coin. It comes with ability to truly be with our emotions, like the seeming reality, and I put that in like air quotes, right? of what we're experiencing in our day-to-day life, no matter how painful or whatever unfair, so many people in relationships, they feel like they have problems with what their partner's doing. They feel wronged or like it's unjust. They don't feel understood, respected, heard, whatever. So that's like real. But then there's also this big let go where, once we've been with that emotion and given ourselves the grace to really feel and see and hear and whatever we need out of that experience, there's this big let go moment. And it's a true mechanism where we have to accept in order to let go. And then it just discharges out of our energy field and we have space to create whatever the hell we want instead of being, a preset program walking around. So.
It's interesting how it really does, like, those type of experiences really do plunge you into like deep-seated emotions that you may not have fully, worked out. In your case, it would have been grief there. But then it also brings to light how transient those things truly are at the same time. So they're there for your experience, your understanding, your growth, but at the same time, just like a cloud passing by, release it, watch it go. It's just there and it's gone. And, that's like a summary of the human experience, really. And it's all just food for the soul, really, at the end of the day. So for you to have that and go through that, you're just kind of sending it all back. You're kicking it all back. And that's really, in my opinion, the point of incarnation. The point is to have the experiences. And also going back to your Lyme's experience, these are all part of the human, collective experience that we're all to have. And it's like the second that I'm a huge proponent of Taoism and Chinese philosophies, and I absolutely love the Diamond Sutra. I promote it constantly on my podcast Instagram page, and a lot of those texts kind of discuss what you were alluding to a moment ago. It's like you have these experiences, you can feel this sorrow, but it's like you're an entity, a being experiencing these things and wanting to achieve say enlightenment, but at the same time there's also no entity, no being, no enlightenment to be achieved. So it's everything is meaningful in the sense of having the experience, but then it's also not meaningful and pointless, like what you're saying. Now, I find a lot of people will get too caught up on that it's pointless side of things, and I just had a recent conversation with a friend of mine who, it's almost like he's bordering on a little bit of depression because I find he gets a little bit too into that it's all not so meaningful.
It's apathy. It's like it's a cover.
Yeah, and it's a nihilistic point of view and a way of being. I was trying to explain to him, he was like, what's the meaning to life? And I was trying to explain to him, well really, just recently, I'll give you a brief story. He has an interest in building things. So I was like, well, what do you enjoy doing in your life? So you find what you're passionate about. And then like he built a sauna for himself. So he learned how to do it. He went and got the material. He'd never done it before, put it together. And then he was sitting in the sauna and he enjoys his sauna now. I was like, this is part of your reason for being. You learn, you go out, you acquire materials, you put something together, and you enjoy the fruits of your labor. And this creates purpose. So I feel we all need to have these mini purposes all the time. Us having this conversation creates purpose. When people don't have purpose, it's like they don't have any sense of direction, and I find that's when the depression ensues and all that. So now getting back to what you were saying about people's, a big hang up that people have is they don't feel they're heard, seen, or understood. Now, do you find that social media, it's almost like contradictory to what you think it would do, but you think it would give people this platform to speak and communicate and grow and have a community, but it seems that a lot of people just look at other people doing these things and then they themselves start to get depressed. So it's like, it's counterintuitive to what you think the purpose of social media truly is, to give people that opportunity to be seen, heard, understood from their peers, but rather they're not really having that. They're just seeing others that are seen, heard, and understood, and it's creating this like vacuum of depression. So you think, what was your take on social media as a whole? I mean there's the downs of it in that sense.
Yeah, it's both. I think everything has team light and team dark filtered and functioned throughout it. So there's definitely, from my perspective, like everything is this and that, right? There's no either or way about it. So it's just understanding how it functions in your life at that moment. So like ayahuasca could be awesome, and it could be not the greatest choice to move you toward the direction of your bliss, the direction of your uncovering of the love nature that you are. Because I do see it as, when we're talking about that whole thing, what you were saying about, I can't remember what you said, but a quote came to mind. Bill Thetford, who co-scribed A Course in Miracles, and he said, "I know it's hopeless, it's just not serious." So it's kind of like encompassing both sides of the coin, right? Acknowledging that something could be hopeless, but that it really doesn't matter. And you're speaking about your friend who wasn't seeming to be in touch with, you know, sort of going into this place of apathy. It made me think of David Hawkins' work. Have you seen it?
David Hawkins.
David Hawkins.
No, I don't think I have.
He's an author and a researcher that he actually passed away a couple years ago, but he wrote a couple of books. One's like Power versus Force, very profound book. And then he wrote a book called Letting Go. And his work has influenced mine for many years, but he actually created a scale of consciousness that shows where we can kind of be at any point in time, and different parts of us can be in different places at the same time. So it's not like you're just in apathy or you're just in grief or you're just, you know, but what you're saying, like this kind of nihilistic view, and your friend said, what is the meaning of life? The thought that came to me is that this is it. Like, we're sitting in it. It's an experience. And what it sounds like he was doing was trying to kind of intellectualize his experience, and sitting in that apathy, which is really just like, again, it's a cover. It's a resistance to what is, and not wanting to be with actual reality grounded life. And it's so important to be in touch with that, because that is the path through. You know, you have to let all of that reality be with you so that you can digest and process it out, so that you can achieve experiencing a new reality. And what happens is nothing outside of you has to change, that you perceive it differently. Like, you can be sitting in the same exact spot doing nothing differently in your life, but your perception of what is will change.
Mm-hmm.
And what I
all about perception, yeah. Mm-hmm.
What I experience is gratitude and like reverence and just like this kind of awe. And it's not like I experience that all the time, and I've worked my ass off to be able to get there. It sucks to forgive. It feels like you're sacrificing something. It feels like you're letting go of something that would be valuable to you. But I've learned to trust A Course in Miracles, which is, you know, hands down the biggest spiritual resource that I've ever encountered in my life. And, you know, the way that I encountered that book, have you heard of A Course in Miracles? Or?
I've heard of the book. I actually haven't read it, though. It's been recommended a few times. So.
Yeah, take that as a sign, right? I actually like had a crazy experience where I came home from school one day, and this was when I had just gotten back out of my experience. I went back to school and like resumed my life, almost like nothing had happened in a way, but you know, everything was different. But I got home from school and I laid down on my bed, and like the second my head hit the pillow, I got sucked out of my body into this like astral experience, and was kind of like projected out into the universe. And I was looking down at the planet Earth and all the stars around me, and just like real life space, you know, and all of a sudden everything got sucked into like a pinpoint and disappeared. And so it's just like blank white space. And I'm like, oh, it's the disappearance of the universe. Like, I know what I'm talking about. And then whoop, back in my body, and I wake up like, what the hell just happened? And so I Googled Disappearance of the Universe, and it's a book about A Course in Miracles, because A Course in Miracles is a really thick, it's like biblical in size, and very thin pages, small writing, and very verbose. But a lot of authors have written about A Course in Miracles. I'm actually writing a book right now that's highly geared, and it's called Get Real, about the nature of reality, and talking about the Course and my experiences and how forgiveness and all the things. So basically, that's how I kind of came into contact with it, was through this other book, Disappearance of the Universe, which was written about A Course in Miracles. And I've had just so many experiences that have proven to me the reality of this stuff, that when we can be with and let go, there is this whole other reality available to us at any given time. And so can't remember where I was going with that, but long tangent.
No, yeah, I get what you're saying. I do agree in large part about what you're saying about the perception of things. You know, I while coming down off of a 4-ACO DMT trip, I was just like running errands, and I was out at a local store. Actually, it was like one of those like dollar store type of places, and just grabbing stuff as I normally would, like grabbing little things like dog treats or something. And off in the distance, there was a mother there with 2 children, and the children were wanting to get some toy off of some like action figurine off of the wall. And they were talking with their mom saying, can we have this? Can we have this? And it's like, this comes into perception. It's like I was just like hoarded out of the dollar store, and I was just in this empty black space where these beings were there having this conversation. The mother I took as Mother Earth, and she was saying to the kids, yes, you can have this toy, but know that it's cheap and it won't last long.
Uh-huh.
And the kids were excited to have these toys, and they were like, that's fine, we want them. So I took this as an experience of pre-incarnation, of these children being souls and wanting to take human form. Mother Earth, you can have it, sure, but understand it's a cheap was like a joke of this. I took it as like a joke of the universe, like it's a cheap little trinket toy, this human body. Yeah. Don't take it too seriously. It's only for your enjoyment, and then it'll break, it's gone. So it is like the perception shift in that instant. If I'm not having this, if I'm not tuned in, I could just see these kids whining to their mom about a toy. But tuned in, I see it as this whole like communication of the universe, and like it's just this beautiful thing. And then the mother and kid went off, and then I just went back to buying dog toys. But like the perception there, it's like something, I find that I carry that with me a lot, and I find the world, I made actually a whole solo cast podcast episode where I talk about the world communicates to you, to individuals.
Yes.
And it does it in ways that unless you are fully receptive, tuned in and aware, something like that would just pass by. You know, like those little things throughout your day-to-day experience, it just pass by and you don't take any meaning from them. But rather now I've taken this meaning out of that I've held with me for months and months and months. Like that was like 6 to 8 months ago. But it was so powerful in so short, like 1 minute span. You know, I think that's how powerful perception is, because I rewired my brain in that moment.
Yes, for sure.
To think differently about our experience and how and what. And now all of a sudden I see our experience as we're all these like entities like lined up, like excited. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Let's take birth. I'm excited. Let's go. And then you ask for permission. Is it my time to do this? Yes. You go and you're born. And I took it as more of everyone in line for a really exciting roller coaster, rather than the suffering and everything else that people tend to focus on. So yeah, just getting back to perception, I just wanted to give that little anecdote because I thought it was just amazing, like perfect example of how you could just see one thing and then see something entirely different in the same circumstance.
So much. Yeah, there's so much that's coming up in that for me, because, you know, that is the ultimate, this is going to go real deep, but that is the ultimate, you know, goal, so to speak, is that, you know, this place is impermanent and that we're going to dissolve back to that oneness once we reclaim the understanding of who we really are. And it's not like we're trying to build that consciousness. It's really like we're trying to uncover the innateness that's already within us. And so self-acceptance, self-compassion, self-love, that's what it looks like right now, is like applying that you're okay no matter what, that grace, that we can really learn to saturate ourselves in it. And once you have that experience where you've started to recover that, it's almost like you'll have human thoughts, but you'll sort of just like, huh? Oh, that's weird. You know, like you don't identify with the things that you experience if you're like triggered, or if you're like taking an issue or a grievance with someone. It's kind of like, well, that's weird. That doesn't like really belong here anymore. So you reclaim this gratitude and this just peace. And so if it's apathy, if it's nihilism, there's something there that you're in resistance to, because our ultimate nature is love. And as we continue to reclaim that, it just dissolves everything. So yeah, that's really cool. That experience had to have been one of those download shift moments where it's
yeah. I've had a few of those. They've been really good. Yeah.
And the universe is always talking to us, and so learning to listen, and those are the sort of things that I would love to facilitate in terms of like a very straightforward, you know, easily accessible class, because I think it's like these sort of experiences, they come by experience, and so there's no rushing that process, right? You can't rush the healing or anything like that, and everyone's going to unfold in their own way. But I've felt like since the beginning, True Self Institute is ultimately supposed to be some sort of like school on spirituality, like real simple, very grounded, practical, but also like extremely on the flip side, containing those really deep ancient truths, putting them out in a way that many different people, no matter their age or their background or where they're from or what they're into, could understand and absorb some of that for their own practical benefit and start to see and live that experience where they're like, damn, okay, like I understand who I am and what I am. I've been going through so much to shift into that. And I'm telling you, like, there's certain times in my life where I'm just like walking around and I'll just feel like this utter wave of like love just hit me that's not coming from me. It's directed at me. Like when you're saying the universe is always talking to you, it's like I just feel that God or source or whatever you want to call it just loving me so much. And it's a very visceral and profound and real experience. But I felt a little crazy when it first started happening. So I'm like, you know, what is this? Like, because it's almost like romantic and fatherly and all the things at once, like the love behind all loves.
Mm-hmm.
I've done a lot of, I think I started Googling like romantic feelings from the divine and came across Paramahansa Yogananda's work, which he wrote a whole volume of texts on divine romance and just these kinds of ways we can experience ourselves. And I want people to know that love. You know, I put something on vision board years ago about True Self Institute that, you know, I chose these images with intuition purely. So I'd flip to a page and know it was in the left bottom corner and tear it out and just stick it on there. And so not all of it made sense to me when I first put it on there, but I have a quote on there that says, my goal is for fans to understand love on a godly scale. And I didn't know what the hell that meant when I put it on there. It's kind of like, sure, sounds good, you know, but hadn't had the experience yet where my perception was shifted in that download type moment, whereas like nothing will ever be the same, you know? So to watch this stuff come together, it's just always been pretty interesting, profound. Mm-hmm. And I want to share that with other people. So it's totally dead on. My vision board knew more than I did.
Actually, I have, I'm going to put it in this chat here from our if you open up the chat window, I just put an image. I think it summarizes this divine love. It's an image of, I posted on the podcast Instagram. It's an image of Ram embracing, so in Hinduism, Ram being God or a deity, embracing Hanuman and doing it in this loving embrace that is exactly like what you just described there. It's this downloading of just pure compassion. I receive it all the time. As well throughout the day, and it's really interesting. Like sometimes I'll get really emotional. Like I'm like a lot of people consider me like a manly type of dudeish guy. Like I lift weights, we also stuff, whatever. But I'll get like very emotional, teary-eyed. Sometimes I have to take like a break from what I'm doing, just because of the overwhelming sense of emotion.
Yeah, it's overwhelming, huh?
Yeah. Did you take a look at the image? I put it in the chat there, the link to it.
Yeah, it's being slow to pull up for some reason, but
yeah, I want to just get your reaction to that, because I posted that a while ago, and a lot of people kind of they really liked it, and I think it really depicts that feeling, because I found the image and I was like, wow, this is it. It's this like loving embrace that it's like everything is all right kind of embrace, you know, like and you can just surrender anything to it, you know. It's a really cool feeling, and I think a lot of people don't have that feeling. So, you know, it's well, what you're doing sounds wonderful. It feels like you're bringing that to people, you know.
A lot of people don't. Like, think about, you know, because we're saturated in this wellness culture more so. So I tend to like think that everybody knows this stuff and that it's common knowledge, because like you see it on Instagram, you see it's becoming more and more common. Like the fact that Brene Brown is doing the shame talk on Netflix, and that's like the hottest thing, you know, like the world has changed in the last 10 years. So I tend to think that way. Like I'm very optimistic. Oh, I see the picture. That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's it. Just so much.
Yeah.
Care and grace and love and just unconditional all the time.
Yeah. And it's the feeling of I'm always there for you.
Yes.
You just need to just let me embrace you, you know. But it's beautiful. I love the photo. I'd love to blow that up and put it on my wall, to be honest. But
yeah, I get the meditation, the visualization started coming through of me like on the Star Tours ride at Disneyland, where like all this stuff seems to be happening. I'm like, whoa, you know, having a lot of fun on the ride, and kind of like there's parts where it's like scary, or it's like, whoa, something's flying at my head, or, you know, but like really you're strapped in, you're good. Like everything's being taken care of, you're coordinated, you know? So yeah, so that's interesting. I can't remember what I was about to say. My husband just walked in, but
that's all right. I think that's pretty good closing thought. And in general, is everything's good and you're okay. So just ride that roller coaster and have fun with it. But
Totally.
before we wrap up, is there anything you wanted to plug? Again, I'll put all your links and everything in the description of this episode, but anything you want to just closing thoughts?
No, essentially just to keep an eye out for the Institute in general. And, my website's www.trueselfinstitute.com. If anyone's interested in doing some of the virtual work, or if you're here in Phoenix, definitely reach out, connect to me. We meet once monthly with the Soul Solutions networking groups. I'm about to expand into the bigger office to start hosting, local workshops and classes on a regular basis. The other thing that will be happening is I'm putting out a book in the next 8 months called Get Real. And so that should be coming by, early next year. And that's going to be all about my experiences and just kind of putting together that really practical source book on all this stuff about what we're truly capable of, who we truly are, stepping into our power, and understanding all that. And I also just want to mention, because, we talked about David Hawkins, A Course in Miracles, and another really amazing book, if you're called to it, is Living in the Heart. It's about healing the heart and understanding that, we have this encoded destiny. That's a Drunvalo Melchizedek book. And so there was one more book that I really wanted to share as well. But
in terms of, you say Melchizedek in terms of, that's like the doesn't that have association to Christ as well?
There's an ascended master, Melchizedek, who's really plugged into the energy grid and our, collective evolution. But there's actually a guy named Drunvalo Melchizedek that's here in Arizona, but he's, world renowned. And this book just kind of came along right at the right time, like most things do in this holographic reality, and just blew my world open as far as the way that I understood, our energetic potential, and the way that the power of our heart as an electromagnetic field. He also goes into, our multidimensional beingness. There's many actually children that are being trained to see without their eyes all over the world right now, and just interesting things that I didn't even know existed, but he kind of puts it all in there. And Pete Carroll knows about this shit. It's just like NASA knows, everybody's in on it, but nobody's really openly talking about it. And I think that's kind of some of the stuff that I'm wanting to, shed some light on and just expand into more common knowledge, but in a grounded and practical way, that people can apply to their lives and really experience the benefit of their own power, their own true self. Oh, Joe Dispenza. I'm a huge fan of his, and his work has really helped me to understand that, grounded awareness of who we are and what we're stepping into in our inherent development. So.
Very cool. Well, thanks for the recommendations. I'll probably check out A Book in Miracles, just because I'm surprised I haven't gotten to it yet.
Yeah.
I'll have to do that.
Course in Miracles, for sure. Let me know. You can message me and I'll give you all the other resources for this smaller books that help to kind of break you in.
I'll shoot you a message. That way I can just get them from you, and I'll just put them right down in the description if anyone wants to just copy and paste and check them out from there.
Very cool.
All right. Well, thank you for taking the time. Appreciate it. And I'll see you online on all that stuff. I'm sure we'll have another chat sometime soon, but keep me posted as well on when you do open up your local, larger office. And
that'll happen in 12 days. So.
Oh, really? Okay, cool.
It's happening, yeah.
I'll throw up an Instagram story or something and tag you in it, and then if anyone.
Oh, thank you. I'll let you know when the book's done, because that's going to be the big thing.
Oh, cool. Yeah, for sure. All right. Thank you. Talk again. Take care.